Hi, this is Dr. Sage Breslin, and I am here to break through with Ed Rush. He is a former fighter pilot. He is a business strategist and advisor. And really, I think I couldn't actually describe him in any kind of thumbnail or nutshell. He is just an amazing human, and we are going to talk with him today about what he's got coming up and where he's come from and what his breakthroughs were. So welcome, Ed Rush.
What's up? Hey, it's so good to be here with you. It's been a while since I've seen you.
I
I
know.
think the last time I saw you, I had an event in Dallas and we were both flying back to the West Coast and we just so happened to be sitting in the same first class on Alaska Airlines. So, passing champagne bottles back and forth, whatever we were doing at the time. So anyway, it's good to see you.
It's great to see you too. I have a great clip of you reading my book in first class.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, because there's a story that I should just tell the story while we're talking. So I tell this story. I wish I could. Oh, here it is. I had to go back to my little bookshelf. So the story that I tell, I say, I've always wanted to walk into on an airplane and see someone sitting there reading my book. And I go, that happened to me just the other day. And usually when I say that, the whole audience, they clap and I go, well, I mean, I gave the person my book, but and the story is this guy got on the airplane with an awful attitude. He was upset because the Wi-Fi in the plane wasn't working. And his exact words were, what the hell am I going to do for 2 hours without Wi-Fi? And I reached into my bag and I handed him this and I said, this is what you're going to do for 2 hours. And to his credit, he read the book.
For him.
So the joke was when we were flying back, because I just told that story at my event that you were at. You handed me your book and said, here's what you're going to do for the next 2 hours. So.
And do you remember it wasn't Wi-Fi, but you were missing a charger?
Yeah.
And so I loaned you a charger and said, here, take the book.
Yeah, take the book and the charger. So what fun. So it's good to be here with you, by the way.
It's
super
super
exciting.
Here.
What a beautiful intro. I love the graphics. What a great show you've created here. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Well, I am super excited. I was telling our producer that I was laughing because we had finally kind of got you booked for the show. And then I got this email, and it's one of your, sent out to everybody, right? That, and the email was talking about some really exciting stuff you have coming up. And I was looking like, we couldn't promote Ed any better, It's kind of perfect timing. So I would love it if you would tell us what kind of exciting things you've got going on here, and then we'll dive into the rest.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for saying that. So like Sage said, sort of in the introduction, I was a fighter pilot, so I flew F-18s in the Marines. And one of the things I learned in the cockpit was the importance of vision. I mean, you're moving at, in certain cases, over 1,000 miles an hour over the ground. Usually, if you're going against other airplanes, either live or in training, they're coming at you the same speed. So, I mean, there's 10 to 20 miles per hour in closure. So having the ability to look out a little bit and to see where things are going is really important in the airplane. And we used to joke that sometimes you're so far behind the airplane that it feels like you're holding on. And other times, man, you're so far ahead of the airplane that it's almost like you're playing, 7D chess in the air. And so I took that strategy really out of the cockpit into the business world. I love looking forward to see where things are going, because if I can make really good decisions now about where things are going, then first of all, it takes a lot of stress out of planning, but it also gives me the ability to make smart and sound business decisions based on like what Wayne Gretzky said, where the puck is going. And we're recording this right now in the summer of 2021. Which is, at the end of maybe the last year and a half of maybe some of the bumpiest, most tumultuous time in not only our country's history, but also in the world's history. And it's still bumpy. I mean, the media narrative is still like the world is coming to an end. But what I'm seeing is actually quite the opposite. The world is coming back with a vengeance. The business world is exploding. I have had the blessing of having over 467 one-on-one coaching and consulting clients. And I can tell you, my clients, it's all boom right now. They're seeing incredible gains. People are coming awake. They're becoming more aware. They're frankly staying off of news a lot more, which is really, really helpful. So the media narrative is like things are getting so bad, but the business narrative is things are really growing. And I've been telling people this fall is going to be one of the biggest falls. What happens when people come back? My favorite months to market things, by the way, are September, October, February, March. There's something about September. People really come alive mentally. It's this whole back to school mentality, whether you have kids or not. And people are starting to really become aware. So I've got a product I'm launching with a partner of mine named Michael Haig. You've met Michael, a Hollywood screenwriting coach. I've got a mastermind group I'm launching right now, started launching today, as a matter of fact. And I've got a new show that I'm going to be doing on YouTube. So I'm pretty excited about all the things that are coming down the pike.
Well, that is awesome. I love the fact that people from a wide variety of sort of arenas and areas can connect with you, whether it is the intimacy that you gain in a mastermind, whether it is learning to better tell your story or communicate your story, or whether it is, more of a dialing in for the business acumen and the strategies that are so great that you have to offer. So that's really exciting.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I really like, as you know, I really like sharing this message. I find that most entrepreneurs are very lonely. It's hard, normally your spouse doesn't really know that much about what you do. Your friends definitely don't know that much about what you do. It's hard to find people to celebrate your successes with, and it's really hard to find people to celebrate your defeats with. When you go to a business group, and you say, "How are you doing?" Most people will be like, "Oh, great. Oh, great." And I've had friends of mine who were like on the verge of bankruptcy, going through like marital stress, kids who were sick. And I'm at an event with them. They're like, "How things going?" "Great, great." I'm like, "You lie."
Yeah.
So as a business owner, sometimes it's hard to like, what are you supposed to do? Go to an event and be like, it's really hard right now, but it's really nice. Like, remember that show Cheers way back in the day? My kids and I were just watching reruns of that. It was so much fun. And the laugh track and everything. That song in the beginning of that show says, you want to go where everyone knows your name.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, you need a safe place where you can go and you can sit down and go, "Guys, this month has been really hard."
Yeah.
And have people who can grieve a little bit with you, and then go, "Okay, now what are you going to do about it?" And you're like, "You know what I'm going to do?" And then you come back into that positive zone. And by the way, it's great to have people to celebrate with. Man, I've had some folks go from 20 million to 40 million in the middle of a mastermind year. And it's nice to have a group of people who are going to celebrate that with you without asking you for money. You know what I'm saying? Like you pull that at church and you're like, "Hey, I just went from 20 million to 40 million. There's people with dollar signs that'll pop in their mind. And by the way, I'm a church person. So like, I'm not trashing. I'm just saying the world is a difficult place to be as an entrepreneur. So so it's nice to have those people that you can come home with. And like you said, whether it's a live stream like you do so well, whether it's a live event, whether it's a coaching session or a mastermind, I've been really blessed to be part of a place that entrepreneurs can call home. So it's fun.
That's beautiful. That was exactly the mindset that I had and the design when I put together my group leadership mastermind. And that's actually launching now. We're going to do a slightly shortened version, an 8-week version here in the next couple of weeks. We'll launch. And that was my thought, that people, they don't have a lot of places where they can be honest, where they can be authentic. And, I am going through a health concern, and one of my colleagues said to me, "You have to be open about that with the world." And I'm a fairly private person, so I was like, "No." But it has been, it's been an incredible journey for me to make that choice, to be very honest and authentic, to allow people to support me, which is that I'm, I have to fight to be a wise warrior instead of just a warrior, like I really get my head into, I'll just do this alone. I'll take care of myself. And this has been an incredible divine 2x4 therapy that has, proved to me, nope, that's not the best way to go. So like you, I think that we have our minds in the same place to support entrepreneurs and leaders as they move forward, as they have both the gains and the pitfalls. So very excited for both of us, actually.
That's pretty cool. I just want to just encourage you with the decision that you made. I've had friends of mine. Well, Mike Koenigs.
Yeah.
When Mike got diagnosed with stage 3A colorectal cancer, first of all, it was a shock to him, as he will admit. And then he was public about his cancer treatment recovery.
Yeah.
And that took a lot of guts. I've known people who didn't tell anybody. And I've known people who didn't tell anybody, and then they passed away. And people are like, whoa, what's up with
What
that?
happened?
You find out for 2 years they were struggling. And I was like, well, maybe I would have been nicer. I would have, could have prayed, said a prayer for you or something.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that's a hard decision because you're when you do that, you're at not only do you get the outpouring of love and support and prayers, but you also get like everybody's medical advice, which
Right.
when I was walking through that with Mike, and by the way, the reason I share that publicly is because Mike shared it so publicly. He wrote a book about it, for crying out loud. So I think he got over 100 emails in a week with medical advice.
Oh,
and I mean, I'm talking about like when you have cancer, you get everything from people who are cancer survivors just encouraging you all the way to some really out there treatment recommendations. And now, and at some point he just went out and said, look, I don't want any more help. I'm going to make my decision now. So I don't need your, but it was well-meaning, obviously. It wasn't malicious. It was just, people just give you their opinion. So
absolutely. Mike was so sweet. He actually sent me, I'd been talking to one of his guys, and he was, I think, away at a conference or something. And he sent me a personal email with a video. And
wow.
just being so supportive of this process and this journey, and offering his help and support. And he is such an amazing human, like you, to be doing so much, to be so successful, and yet also to be able to be human and in that space. So, yes. And I can attest to people. I love, when people are supportive. It's great. My favorite post that I got, like comment on my post, was a colleague who was very supportive of caffeine enemas.
Oh.
And, I'm sure that works for some people. It's not really on the list for multiple myeloma.
Yeah.
It's a very specific treatment, but, it's people feel like they need to share. They don't want me to die. And so anything that they can offer is, that's kind of, it comes from a great place. It was a
really nice, heartfelt way to say, stick this up your butt.
Totally. And I thought, how do I respond to this post with, in a loving and kind and respectful way? And I just said, that might work for some. I'm not sure it would work for me. So I'm not going to try it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so listen, I really meant it when I was introducing you. Like there are so many bells and whistles attached to you. There's so many stories you could tell. I know that, I worked with you for a couple of years, and you offered to have me on your stage. And so, some very big things about me, some, deeply personal things about me. Yeah. I would love maybe to start with just the notion of things that you had to break through. Because I know, like, the transition from fighter pilot into the world of business, where you started versus where you are now, I know that there were, bells and whistles that you had to get through all the way along the way. And I'm just wondering which of those breakthroughs was memorable, and how did you do it? How did you face that?
Wonderful question. Thank you for how you asked that. It's fundamentally probably the most important question to ask any entrepreneur, because the entrepreneurial journey is simply nothing more than a series of breaking into things and then breaking through things. I mean, really, when it comes down to it. So important that one of my events, actually, one of the ones you probably came to, was called The Ultimate Breakthrough, because the idea is we're always bumping into stuff as entrepreneurs. I always tell people, like take, for example, a missile that's coming off of an airplane. Like an AIM-9 Sidewinder, which is a heat-seeking missile. Well, for the first 300 yards or so, a missile coming off an airplane goes perfectly straight, doesn't move at all. That's because we sell missiles, we buy missiles from the lowest bidder, and we don't want to hit ourselves. And then eventually, what it does is it turns on its targeting computer. It starts actively seeking the target that it's now after, and it makes usually a wild correction. And the reason it makes a wild correction is airplanes don't stay in the same place, and they're moving really fast in 3 dimensions, and actually maybe a fourth if you include faster or slower. And so the missile will begin to correct, and a missile's trajectory, you'll see this big zigzag all the way to the target, which gets smaller and smaller until it makes its final impact. And if you look at most entrepreneurial journeys, you'll see, like, if any entrepreneur looks behind them, you see something that looks like a schizophrenic mess. And
So
welcome
true.
to the club. Like, that's just the way that the way that we are. And so most entrepreneurs experience maybe 8 or 9 failures for every success. That's kind of par for the course, I think, if you were just to look at the numbers. It's not what we put on the brochure, encouraging people to be entrepreneurs, but it's certainly part of their life and the reality. And I would say the biggest obstacle that I had to overcome, and the truth is still overcoming. And now let me pause for a moment when I say still overcoming, and then I'll tell you the obstacle. I believe the entrepreneurial journey can be likened to a spiraling staircase where you kind of come back to the same issues, but from a different perspective. Okay. So I'm going to tell you why I said still working through this is fundamentally my viewpoint on 5 different things. So it all of a sudden dawned on me that my growth as a thinker, as a person who's able to, for the most part, manage and control my thinking very well, was how I looked at 5 different things. I'm going to give you those 5. Number 1, how I viewed myself. Number 2, how I viewed my past. Number 3, how I viewed my future. How I view my future. Number 4, how I view money or my purpose. And number 5, how I view my relationship with God, or how you would like to say, someone would say the divine. Okay, so getting straight on those 5 things is massive. I'll give you a couple of examples, and you've seen me do some exercises to help people move through their thinking on that. If you are essentially feeling a sense of unworthiness, which most entrepreneurs struggle with, let me just be fully transparent about that. I have yet to find somebody who thought of themselves higher than they should have. You know what I'm saying? Like, most of us think, like, I want to be humble. And there's this verse, I love this verse in the New Testament of the Bible that says, Paul says, don't think of yourself more highly than you ought to think. Well, most people who read that probably read it to say, don't think of yourself highly. He says, oh, don't think of yourself more highly than you ought to think. Well, look, if you're the best fighter pilot in your squadron and someone comes up to you and says, you're the best fighter pilot in this squadron, it's not humility to be like, no, I'm not. That's just ignorance. And so understanding Napoleon Hill, in Think and Grow Rich, spoke of the importance of what he called accurate thinking. Accurate thinking is actually seeing yourself exactly as you are. Most people who are, say, an 8 or a 9 on a scale of 1 to 10 view themselves at about a 2. And because of that, they become what I call way stations for blessing, way stations for money. This blessings are coming their way, or the money or values coming their way, and they just simply pass it on because of a sense of unworthiness. That connects often to their view on money. Most people grew up in a culture or in a family that had an improper view of money. Money doesn't grow on trees. What do you think? I'm made of money. Most people grew up in a home where mom or dad worked on the basis of, if they worked more, they made more, and if they worked less, they made less. Well, the truth is, the world doesn't operate that way. The world operates on value. You didn't buy an iPhone based on how many hours went into it. You bought an iPhone based on the value. You didn't buy these AirPods for $179 based on how much work they went into it. You bought it on value. That's the true for a book. It's true for almost anything that you invest in. And so my point is, that's the way the real world works. And as entrepreneurs, as quickly as you can move from a work and get paid mentality into a value mentality, those are huge. So the biggest breakthroughs, kind of to wrap this question, that I've experienced had to do with the way that I was thinking which then turned into the way that I was acting, which then turned into results. You got that? So the way you think turns into behavior, behavior turns into a result. So if you're looking at the result as an entrepreneur and you're not happy with what you see, you have to work backwards into the behavior, into the thinking around the 5 areas that I mentioned. I'll tell you one more time, and then I'll finish this question. Number 1, how you view yourself. Number 2, how you view your past. Gosh, I could talk for hours on this. Number 3, how you view your future or your purpose. Number 4, how you view money. And number 5, how you view your connection to God. So those are the 5 that I spend the most time thinking about and breaking through. And truly, like I said, I've done the hard work on those. Now it's refinement, but I'm still working through those. Like you find yourself having one of those days where you're just kind of in a cranky attitude and you're thinking about, like, I'm the mental strength guy over here trying to teach people this stuff. Why am I still struggling with this? Well, you're still working through it. That's like, we all are,
Right. I love that. There's just so much I could unpack in what you just shared. And I will admit that the exercise that you do about the lies that you tell yourself, that has been, and I always tell people that it's from you, but it is one of the most successful exercises I use with my folks. And it is just to help them understand that the lies we tell ourselves and where that lie started. And when I use the word lie, I don't mean it in a critical sense, but
yeah.
and where it started and what the truths are according to God are, it is so liberating when people can tap into that and unpack it and unwind it. I was thinking about just the nature of trauma. And for people who have been traumatized early in their lives, even if they do, a big chunk of therapy or experiential work or whatever, each time they hit a transition in their lives, they will revisit the trauma. We hope, of course, that they do good work with a therapist or advisor or coach or whatever, and that the time spent in that sort of reworking is shorter and shorter and shorter. But like you said, with that staircase, you're getting more and more of a 30,000 foot perspective on the thing, but there are little elements and fragments that can still be there, and they get served up when we go through a major transition. Major transition might even just be, we hit it out of the park with something and we're like, woo, that is a huge win.
Yeah.
And the next couple of days, we find ourselves like, dropping into a little depression and questioning, okay, what's this about? Could I lose this? Is it, is this right? And we have to look and say, okay, what were the issues below the surface? Did they get resolved? Is there another piece that I need to resolve so that I can leap forward and really embrace the awesome stuff that's going on in my life?
As you're watching this episode with Sage and I, what she just said, by the way, that's an indication of someone who's really worked with people. If somebody hasn't really worked with people, the model looks like this. You work through something, and then it's gone forever and everything's beautiful for the rest of your life. That's what Hollywood serves up, but that's not the real world, The real world is, you remember how The Matrix ended and you're like, hey, everything's good. He's like in charge now. And then you felt really good. And then Matrix 2 came out and you're like, oh, nothing even happened, So that's more like it. You're like, oh, okay, now we do the next one. It's interesting you mentioned what happens after success, because that really is interesting, right? A lot of times it's you achieve the thing you wanted to achieve. One of the things I've helped, I think the number now is 1,071 entrepreneurs become authors. Most of them became best-selling authors. And I always get the question, as soon as the person becomes a bestseller on Amazon, they're like exclamation points all over the place. And then they always say, so what do I do now? What's next? Which is like the entrepreneurial approach. Like, okay, great. Now what's next? So, so that was very trend. I like how you described that. That's really true, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we can look at breakthrough work and know that our aim is actually to resolve to the extent that we're able to the things that were, are sitting below the surface. But I'd say we aim at that, and then we prepare our clients to be better equipped for when those things come up again, to
Mhm.
deal with them, to spot them, to be able to say, like, with clarity, oh, here it comes again. All right, well, what did I do last time? What was effective? How do I want to approach it this time? And it allows them to take the fear out of addressing, the material that's getting in their way.
That's so good. That's so good. You know, the when I was teaching pilots, we used to say there were 3 stages in every young pilot's growth. Stage number 1 is I screw everything up and I don't know why. Stage 2 is I still screw everything up, but now I know why. And stage 3 is I start seeing my screw ups ahead of time and I go around
Yes.
them. And what you just described is that, yeah, I mean, you know, there's that one family member who you see every year, you know, at that one get together who drives you up a wall. And for 3 days, Eddie Murphy did the sketch about Uncle Gus. Do you ever remember that old
Yes.
comedy sketch? Uncle Gus comes over once a year and lights the backyard on fire. Well, I mean, the reason that sketch was so funny was because it's so true. You
Yeah.
know, well, you know as well as I do, there's that one person, at work who just every day. Well, yeah, eventually you start to see, hey, wait a second. I'm responsible for myself. I'm responsible for my emotions and my response. And therefore, I'm responsible for what happens now and what happens next. So maybe I should choose differently around this. And I'll tell you how I did this the other day. And I was on an airplane. And, you and I were up in first class before when we were together on that way back. And that's usually the way that I travel. Okay. But on this particular flight, I was going to a client, the late minute booking and everything. Bottom line is I'm back in row 17. And the kid behind me, they have the screens on the seat, which is just an unbelievably bad idea. The kid behind me must have been playing a game because I'm on this 4-hour flight and my head's like, boom, 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 boom. Now, next to this kid, it was probably 6 or 8 years old. Next to this kid was a younger girl. She was probably 6 or 8. He was probably 10. The younger girl was just slightly, and I don't know what was wrong, but she was disabled. Okay, and the dad was over here in the row, and the dad was having trouble with all the kids, not the least of which the kid behind me. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to make this guy's flight harder. I've been there before. I have 4 kids. Okay, and I know he's already got challenges to face as a dad. So what I did, I have a 2-year-old, right? So I have a 16, 14-year-old, 12-year-old, and a 2-year-old. I imagined that the kid behind me was my 2-year-old, right? Because if my daughter was pumping, whatever, it's just my kid. She does that all the time. And I kid you not, for a 4-hour flight, I just pictured it was my daughter, and I had a really big smile on my face, and everything was fine. And it was because I did what you teach, Sage, which is to look ahead. Like I could see where this was going. I would look behind me like 3 times angrily. Then I would look at the dad, and eventually I would be like, could you do something? And now his whole flight is even more stressful because I can't deal with a simple bump in my seat. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, I don't always get that right. My point is, if you use that process that you teach, you start to see your way around those things. And then like 2 weeks later, you get to tell that story on a podcast with Sage Breslin. So
Yeah, and honestly, do you want to sit kind of in heavy energy and be enraged for 4 hours on a flight, where you're trying to probably packed into the seat and you're like, oh my God? Or do you want to kind of step into the light side of things and just say, the guy's got probably more than he can handle right this second. And if that means we can just hold space for him and hold space for the kids, this flight is only 4 hours long.
it's so right on. It's all about the energy. It is all about the energy. And if you simply understand how good things become attracted to good people, it's just because of that, right? So fundamentally, you're responsible for your energy, whether or not the person at work is a jerk or not. And it's exactly right. And what that was, it's what happened on that airplane is essentially a classic reframe, really, when it comes down to it. It's what psychologists have been using, NLP therapists have been using, for hundreds of years, which is simply to just take one thing and turn it into another thing. I've heard this, someone recently, I was reading a book, and the book said, your spouse, all she's doing is trying to make you better, or all he's doing is trying to make you better. So when she's having a bad day and she's upset, really what she's just doing is challenging you to be your best, because really she wants you to. And I thought, man, that is a good reframe. I don't know if it's true or not, but I'll definitely think about that. Like when you're not having a good day, or she's not having a good day, or he's not having a good day, or they're not having a good day, just think about it. All they're doing is training you, challenging you to be your best.
If you are competitive in nature, which I know you are, like if you didn't get to where you are without being competitive, but if you can sort of embrace that competitive nature, it is amazing how you can take that as a challenge. Like, all right, I know my head's, feeling like it's going to explode because the kid, behind me is screaming her, lungs out, and, mom's trying to hold on to a baby or change it in the seat. And, okay, what is it that I'm going to do to help turn this situation around? If you're that kind of person, I can't count the number of babies that I've held, that I've walked down aisles on flights because mom has, is traveling with 3 kids under 5. And, we got to stick together as a people.
Hey, let me tell you, you're right. My son, my 14-year-old, we were on this is another trip, but we all flew back east, saw my family, and then flew back. And I was sitting next to my 14-year-old, and 2 rows in front of us, there was a baby who was just letting it loose, man. Yeah. That kid had a set of lungs. And my son said, "Dad, why doesn't that parent do something about that?" And I said, "You'll never ask that question after you have a baby." Yep. I go, "Hey," I said, "Look, yes, man, here's the deal." I said, "I've been there before, like that dad sitting there, and I've been like there before, like that mom sitting there. And first of all, there's nothing they can do about it. The second thing is, they know everyone's like looking at the back of their head. You can kind of feel that." And I said, "So just give them some grace." Yeah. And but yeah, that and hopefully that was a good lesson for my son too. But it's hard not to think that way when you're a 14-year-old. But
I love that he said something. I love that he said, why is that happening? So that you could say, well, we don't really know why. I think as a parent, it takes one time for you to take a kid on an airplane who has an ear infection that you don't know about.
Oh, man.
And talk about wailing. And in this most recent flight, I said loudly, there were people around me really starting to get angry and make nasty statements. And I just sort of calmly turned to one of my kids who was actually sitting in front of me and kind of cattywampus. And I said, God, that must be a really terrible ear infection that baby has. Silenced everybody around me. And I was like, okay, let's have some compassion. None of us is liking this experience, but we don't have to be judgmental. We really just don't. It's bad for everybody.
And this loops back to here's the thing. Every thought you have can be reset, recalibrated, and reframed into something else. And it can be as easy as what we just described. Now, I know it doesn't feel that easy. I know that person really, really hurt you, but even though it might not be your fault, it is now your responsibility. And sometimes it's just a matter of gaming it out, literally, just like that. Just game it out in your brain. Pretend that you're in, like when I was in boot camp in the Marine Corps, which is no joke, right? This is not an easy 10 weeks that I was experiencing, but I gamed a lot of that out, man. You're walking through the mountains in the rain. Well, I'm Braveheart now. I don't know, like I'm William Wallace instead of Ed Rush. Like, you can play games and your mind will be happy to go along with you. Look, most of the things you're afraid of, you imagined. Why can't some of the good things you're excited about be imagined too? By the way, I mentioned Napoleon Hill and accurate thinking. Here's where accurate thinking doesn't work in the future. I always tell people, go with inaccurate thinking in the future, because everybody's idea of the future is too realistic. it's a bummer. Most people's idea about what the future is like, and you know as well as I do, it never turned, like, even if you planned out the vacation perfectly, it's not going to come out like you planned. So because you already know the future is already going to be inaccurate in your mind, you might as well make it excellent inaccurate. Shoot for the moon, because you're going to be wrong anyway. You might as well just go big in the future. So
I love that.
inaccurate thinking. It's funny. I was on a walk yesterday, and I thought I'm going to write an article about inaccurate thinking, the benefits and the importance of thinking inaccurately. So there you go.
I love that. Well, I wanted to just sort of like point to one experience that I had with you. And there have been so many, and there have been so many life-changing experiences I've had with you. But, this one is sort of, I wanted to mention it because it's exactly what you're talking about just now. And I remember that I had met you during the kind of maybe one of the first times I took a conference with Mike, and you were there. And I just remember thinking, like, gosh, I really want to meet that guy. And the meeting was just brief. Hey, thanks so much. Blah, blah, blah. Next go round, I was able to learn more because you were presenting more. And one of the sort of life-altering events that I had with you is that you came out as a praying man.
Mm-hmm.
And, most people who know me know that I was, so fully connected to God from the moment that I was born and before, that this is so important. But I'd been really closeted with that. And I'd really worried about speaking about that and being more honest about that. And so that particular conference, we were working on the publication of my book, Breaking Through.
Yeah.
And I had, in the first chapter, it's all about connection. And I didn't feel as if I could say, okay, connect to self, connect to other, connect to something greater than the self. I was struggling with it. And so you made the statement, and then you said, for anybody who wants to join me, I'm going to host breakfast tomorrow morning, and you're going to kind of see how I use this in business. The room was overfull, like from, 100 people, I think you had 92 people show up, and which is just amazing. That's an amazing statement. And then you began to lead us through this exercise. And I was so lucky about the people that were at my table, because I began to access an epiphany, and I was sobbing and sobbing with this reality that was coming through for me. And it was just all based on a piece of inaccurate thinking that had kept me stuck and alone. And I went through that, and I was like, oh, okay, going to rewrite that first chapter and going to embrace who I actually am for the rest of my life.
Oh, that's so good.
I'm moving forward. I've had enough of this shit, and it really released me into the space to be myself, speak my truth in business and personally. And so many things have changed as a result of just clearing that obstacle, breaking through that barrier, and allowing myself just to be who I am. So I'm very thankful to you for that incredible experience,
Speaking to the thing that you said in the intro, so I was very, very, very reluctant, very reluctant. Oh my goodness. So I now have this very fluid conversational relationship with God. And I've had that for quite some time, but I was in the middle of a mastermind session. It was probably about 8 years ago. And there was a woman there who was going through a similar journey to what you're going through. And very clearly, God said, I want you to pray for her today. And I said, yeah, I'm not going to do that. No, I don't think you understand. This is a business event. This isn't like a spiritual thing. They came here for business, and everybody in the room had paid, I think at the time they paid $18,000 or $20,000 to be there. There were about 15 people in the room. So I'm like, look, they paid a lot of money and whatever. Bottom line is I had this argument in my head with God for like 20 minutes. And finally, just to not have that argument anymore, I did it, and when I did it, it was very, very interesting. I said, hey, why don't we just take a moment and just pray for this woman? And everybody stood up. And these are people from all faith walks. This is not like a Christian youth or like a
Right.
men's group. Or whatever. This is like everybody, from atheist to Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim, sort of like every Christian, everything in between. They all stood up and put their hands on this woman, and then people started to cry, and you could just feel the energy in the room completely shift. And I was like, wow, that was kind of interesting. I didn't think it was going to go that well. And then now I do it in front of rooms of hundreds of people or use YouTube streams full of thousands of people without even thinking about it. It's kind of funny. Like I was so nervous to do it around people I was so close with. And then now it's like in front of all these people. But yeah, the courage to be able to do that, the courage took the first thing, took the courage. But the interesting thing that I found, which I was really surprised about, I haven't had a single person who's been offended or like upset that I happen to talk about spiritual things. The hunger for this topic right now is so strong. And the funny thing about it is most of the people whose lives have been impacted, and there's a lot of people, most of the we've literally had people physically, literally healed at my events before because of some mindset shift they had, and us praying for them and stuff. So because God showed up, let me just put it that way. So, but the crazy thing about it is I thought everybody was going to be like offended and write letters and stuff like that. It's the opposite. It's the opposite. Now, most of these people would never go to church. Never, for a lot of reasons. And some of those reasons are really good reasons. But somehow, man, and by the way, some of those people believed that God was done with them, or they were done with God, or both. In fact, I've had people come up to me and say that. Former nun in the Catholic Church for 30 years, left the Catholic Church, ended up going and marrying a woman who happened to be my coaching member. And she came up to me crying and said, I thought God was done with me. And I was done with God, and I'm not. And I'm like, man, what amazing breakthroughs. A person who would never go back to church, but God snuck up behind them at a business event. You know what I mean? Like, how cool is that he still cares enough about you to sneak up on you, when you're not looking. And so, yeah, it's been so crazy. The zest and the zeal and the hunger in the business world for the spiritual content is unbelievable. And by the way, it's like you go to church, it's not there, but it's in the business thing. I think it's a beautiful. And you know why? Because people are starting to realize we live in a connected world where there's people who love me and care for me. And because we live in a connected world where there's people who love me and care for me, that tells me that we live with a connected God who loves me and cares for me too. And let's find out more about that, Yeah. And so kind of out the window goes all this like judgment, anger bit, and in through the door comes this compassion and love and kindness and goodness and joy and peace and all the things that are on the top of David Hawkins' Power versus Force scale. If you've ever studied that, all the things that make you stronger are all up here, and they all flow from God and your understanding of who you are in relation to him. And if you can get that straight, man, you will turn into a beast in a good way. You will be able to move mountains and, like change the world if you want to. And it's like one step away. So that's the reason I love doing that. Thank you for your amazing comments about that. I'm going to do it again soon. I haven't had an event for over a year now. I've been online, but I haven't done a live one. I'm kind of itching, Sage, to do one. So maybe I'll do a little small one in Dallas and, get you in there. We'll get to pray. You can pray for some people and I can pray for you.
I love that. Well, it has been life-changing for me, and you've prayed for me before. I think at every event that you held that I attended, I would have stood in a long line to have you pray for me because I know your connection is strong and it's of the same caliber that mine is. And I feel it and I feel a difference. And, I had to let go of what other people thought about me with that connection. And I had to simply say, but this is who I am. Take me or leave me. It's all good. But I know that when I'm connected to an infinite power source, I can move mountains. I really can do anything. And there are a lot of people, and I'll make it a short, little piece on this, but there are a lot of people who have sent me posts, like they've shared the post on, excuse my German, but fuck cancer.
Yeah.
I have been very public to say, actually, this showed up for a very specific reason, which I'm very aware of. It stayed for a very specific reason, which I'm aware of, and it can only be removed or resolved in this specific way because it is protecting me because I was in a very unhealthy relationship. And I think that if I had gotten well, if I'd healed myself, honestly, I might have gone back.
Oh,
And
fascinating.
yes, and the one thing I know
Wow.
that he cannot do is he cannot tolerate illness and injury and hospitals, and so I feel God's grace in what's happened to me and happened for me. And I have no doubt that the treatment is going to be successful and that I'll grow myself basically a new body by February. I'm looking forward to that part. I'm not looking forward to the middle part, but
I
that's
know.
okay.
I know.
And prayer is one of those things that will make it easier. So
Wow. I've
yeah,
never heard anyone who's been able to describe what you just described so clearly and eloquently. Let me just give you um, all the credit in the world. As you're watching this with Sage and I, you're watching someone who practices what she preaches. Okay. So, like, it's really great. You've been teaching this stuff for quite some time now, and it's really fun. And you've been doing it for quite some time, but it's really neat to see how you process this using what you teach.
yeah,
So that's absolutely phenomenal. By the way, I have no question in my mind that you're going to be much stronger at the end of this anyway. And I would love to jump on the phone with you. So let's do that offline because I would love to just be able to pray for you as well. So, or
beautiful.
now before we end our thing, if you want. So, but yeah, that's really cool how you described that. That was worth. Normally, I come and do these interviews, and like I talk all the time, which is kind of what I'm doing anyway. But to hear you say that really was very powerful for me. So thank you. Really, really neat.
My pleasure. Well, I know that you have another interview
Yeah,
coming right
yeah.
up, and I will look forward to actually jumping on a call with you. And because your prayers are important to me and they're always uplifting, and I will look forward to that. And I just want to appreciate you for who you are and who you've become and all of the breakthroughs that you've made so that you are this force to be reckoned with, so that you are a resource for our planet and everybody in it. And gosh, if people have a chance to talk with you, to work with you, to attend one of your functions live or online, they should do it because it's an amazing journey to travel with you on that path and to learn from you. So thank you so much for
That's
joining us.
awesome, man. Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, um, let's talk this week, you and I. That would be
let's do it.
awesome. I'll just send you my schedule. And then, yeah, I mean, anybody who's watching, if you want to come to the kind of event that Sage came to, I normally charge for these events, but I'll just invite you to come as my guest. You just have to email me. So I'll give him the same email. Is it okay if I give him
Yes,
I'm
please
going to
tell
give
us
him the
how
same email
people
you
can.
have for me.
Okay.
This is literally my email. Coaching, COACHING at edrush.com. It's where we communicated just this morning. So that doesn't go to my team. That comes to me. Just send me an email. Tell me who you are. Tell me you saw me on the show today. And what I'll do is I'll reply myself, and then I'll connect you with my team member who will put you on the guest list for the next event. And I'm not sure when that'll be. Maybe November. Who knows? I'm hoping soon. But yeah, I'd love to just meet you and get to know you and see. Uh, you know, it's been a blessing because I've known Sage now for almost 5 years, I think,
Yeah.
and to see your journey, which I've been able, as she just described, to help along the way. But I've been helped a lot by her along the way too. So
Mhm.
these business relationships, they're not just as transactional as they seem to be sometimes. Sometimes they're deeply relational, and it's just beautiful to see. It's nice to work with somebody for a few months, but it's really nice to work with somebody for this period of time because you get to see
Totally.
the whole journey. I'm like, remember that one time I talked to you about going to Ireland? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like you remember those. That was like 2 years ago, right? So you
Yeah.
remember these things, and you're like, oh, you get to see the whole journey.
Yeah.
So that's just been such a blessing. Congratulations on the show. I wish you the best. I hope you end up with millions of people watching it because they should. They should. You should watch Sage and not the news. Let me just put it that way. Don't watch the
Yes.
news. Watch her show. Just be happy. It'll make you happy.
Agreed.
Yeah, yeah, that's
All
cool.
right.
That's
Well,
cool.
thank you so much, Ed. And I hope the next interview goes
Yeah,
even better
thank
than
you.
this one.
Awesome. God bless.
All right. Thanks.